I'm here in Tazewell County. We're exploring the rich history and the landscape here in the heart of Appalachia. I'm here to learn about the wild days of moonshining about 100 years ago. Tell me about yourself.
Well, my name is Joe Van Dyke. My family roots run deep in Tazewell County. Back before it was Tazewell County, it was actually Washington County in the 1700s. And I spent my boyhood right here in this valley, in Brooks Garden, the most beautiful place on earth in my opinion.
So Joe, tell me about your family's heritage here in Appalachia.
It's been stunning me since I started learning about it decades ago, and I've been compiling information for a very long time. And then I was found on my paternal side, on the Van Dyke side, by a DNA search of a 13-step generation away from me, Command Sergeant Major Marine, who helped me put this together about the Van Dyke side, and I started getting interested in it. And they go back to the 1700s, actually, when the brothers came across and immigrated. We have verifiable proof of my great-great-great-great-grandfather John Van Dyke from 1754. He had land grants in Washington County back then, had land grants down in the Busthead, well not Raven, but Busthead area, down in way southern part of Tazewell County. And he had two land grants given to him there, one in 1783 and one in 1794 of about 250 acres total. The farm still exists to this day, not owned by Van Dykes, but is being taken care of, and I understand he's buried on the property, which I intend to find. And I found that interesting, but what got me going was my maternal side of the family, my mother's side, the Dunfords.
So tell me about the Dunfords of Southwest Virginia.
They were also very early in the country. We have the original Mr. Dunford over in Wythe, John, I believe was his name as well, 1811 in Wythe. He had 9 children, and one of those children immigrated down to, or came over from Wythe to Whitaker Ridge and started life there. That was William Albert. William Albert, interestingly enough, joined the Civil War, or the war between the states, right here in Tazewell County at the foot of the courthouse. Became a prisoner of war and stayed up at the tip of St. Mary's Island at that notorious camp up there for, I'm not sure exactly how long, but I do have his POW record and when he was let go from there. And he was a pretty feisty man, you might say. Well, feisty is the least what you could say about him. He came back, became a farmer, businessman. That's what struck me about the whole story to start with, because I found the first article that said the largest family known in Southwest Virginia. And I'm like, well, how cool is that? I come from one of the biggest clans around. Little did I know. And you look at the map, you'll see the Van Dyke clan and Dunford clan were literally 4.5 miles apart down from Whitaker Ridge to Busthead. Now, how I don't have 3 eyes and 2, 2, 2, 1 and 1, I don't know. But if you see fellas looking like me, you better believe there's a lot of us around that came from the same holler. That's for sure.
Joe, now we're here in Bandy, Virginia. What's the significance of Bandy to the story of moonshining in Tazewell County?
Well, there were certainly moonshiners and stills in the Bandy region, Tazewell County, and in particular Whitaker Ridge, and this was the focal point of what we're looking at here. Now, you know, where there are stills, there are revenuers. Well, Robert Chapman Osborne, they call him Chap, was a sheriff deputy here in Tazewell County. But before he became a county sheriff, he worked in the steel mill down here at Big Stone Gap. Now, he got into an altercation with his co-workers, Ike and Jim Belcher. Well, these fellas got mad at him for cutting steel too fast and overworking them, so they started a fight. Along comes their older brother, Prentice Belcher. Prentice is carrying a piece of steel, being threatening, and he realizes it's over, so he stops. Well, that wasn't good enough, no. Their father also worked at the mill, and he was the police officer there, Marshall Belcher. So Marshall reprimanded them all to go to the mayor's office for fighting. It was against the law. Well, Prentice got upset with that, and he said, if I'm going for a reason. And he took a step towards Chap, and they were only feet apart. Chap had a .41 Derringer in his pocket, shot him one time in the heart, killing him nearly instantly. Now, he was reprimanded to the jail that night, held over to the grand jury in Wise County. Now, what happened at the grand jury is unclear because he was not charged with murder. He was sent back to the furnace to work. It seems though when he went back, he lost his left arm in an accident. That's a terrible thing. You know, you can't be a working man with one arm much in, that time frame. So somehow he got hooked up with the Tazewell County Sheriff's Department and became a deputy in 1908. So in 1922, he wanted to make a name for himself. He wanted to become Tazewell County's prohibition officer. And they said, sure, do it. Well, now he had to find the moonshine. No one would bring him up to these mountains where we are right now. Even the Sheriff's Department would not come up here with him.
So Chap Osborne knew he was in the right area, but nobody would give him any information about this area or anything that would help lead him to the shine stills in this area. Is that right?
Well, that's correct. Chap couldn't find anyone brave enough to bring him up here, as I told you earlier. He tried 2 times, and no one would talk to him because they knew he was the prohibition officer and people were going to go to jail, and that's the way they made their money here. Somehow he came across my great uncle Samuel Barney, and Samuel lived on Whitaker Ridge near the very top at the Bandy Church. Well, Sam agreed to take the job. I suppose for money, I'm not sure. From what I understand, the family was pretty poor. Everyone was poor then. So he took the job and he snitched on his neighbors. Probably a bad thing to do. So they put together a posse, brought the stills down, tore them up, emptied out all the mash, beer, and shine, and all the ingredients into the creek, let it all run, while they're being watched with the eyes of the hills on them, but they didn't find no moonshiners, not one. Not one person was busted in the whole thing. So Chap Osborne takes the still back that evening down to Raven to take to the judge Monday morning for evidence to come up and bust these people.
So it sounds like Sam Dunford stuck his neck out, and that was risky. So what happened next?
On or about August 5th, after the moonshine stills were busted by Chap Osborne, well, those boys that owned the still, Kenny Christian, Leo and Wilburn Smith, who were brothers, approached the house and accused Sam of snitching, and a gun battle ensued nearly immediately. 12 shots were fired in total, it's said. Sam took 3 bullets, 1 to each thigh, 1 all the way through his body and through his lung. The newspaper said he would not live. He refused to go to the hospital on top of that. Tough, these Dunford men were tough. Well, the moonshiner said he'd never leave Whitaker Ridge alive. That was just not the case. So during the gun battle, his young daughter was inside the home, and she caught a bullet across the forehead and grazed her forehead. She was fine. Now, as I said, 3 shots were fired from inside the home, killing Kenny Christian immediately. And upon investigation, by the time the cops got here, it was a long time, but by the time they did get here, no one was talking about it. Kenny was dead on the ground. His mother was attending to him, crying, her only child. Apparently, someone did pull the trigger from inside the house, killing Kenny Christian. So, they said Kenny was paid for. And pretty much that's the way things went back in those days.
So, moonshine was a regular part of life for people in those days?
Although illicit alcohol was rampant in these hills and all over the parts, it was just a natural way of life. You had a lot of things going on at the Prohibition era. There were few jobs, high inflation, a threat of the Bolshevik Revolution. So the people didn't have a lot to work with, so they worked with what they had, and that was what they lived on in the farms and fields. Moonshine caused a lot of murder and mayhem, there's no question about it. But you know what? From those ashes, those moonshine stills on Whitaker Ridge, came a lot of really good people. Doctors, lawyers, politicians, military people of all stripes that became great contributors to Southwest Virginia, and in particular Tazewell County. I find it very interesting how culture has changed so radically. The people back then lived longer, they lived better, they ate healthy from gardens, they took care of their own people. With the Dunford history, I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm proud to be a part of that clan, and I think it's an extremely important and interesting story for Tazewell County.
Thank you for sharing your family history with me, Joe.